All right. Hi, everyone. Thank y'all for joining us for our Beef Brunch news update on Tuesday, May 3rd. It's been a little bit since I've been with y'all. I was able to jump on today. I know the guys have handled everything just fine the last two news updates without me, but I wanted to jump on just because I could. We've had a very busy April. I know they've kind of covered our events. We had the AI class at the Hill Farm, field day at Dean Lee, and field day at the Red River Station. And so April was fun, but April was busy, and things are kind of slowing down just in terms of the events that we've got going on. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Vince, for our update in Central and South Louisiana.
All right, thanks everyone for having me today. Fortunately, we were talking about it before we came on the air, but we got some rain in areas. We'd been remarkably dry for Central and South Louisiana from the fall through the winter, and seems like we're getting those periodic rainfalls. Unfortunately, depending on where you were, we have, we've talked about this before. We have a lot of crop area in the area that I work in Louisiana, and we're in the heart of the soybean planting currently, and we don't need to repeat anything with the price of fuel and fertilizer and what have you. Unfortunately, we have some soybean production was drowned out. Some of these 2 and 3 inch rains over Saturday and Sunday. So with that being said, pastures getting some much needed rainfall. We've had a considerable amount of baleage or hay cut for baleage, forages cut for baleage, and some of that going on. But the ryegrass is starting to fade out. It's going to seed. A lot of spring cow working going on. The market is, somewhat favorable, and I'm sure Jason will cover that in his update. So there is some enthusiasm as far as the market is concerned. Not much enthusiasm when it comes to fertilizer and fuel prices, as we've harped on for the last several months. Um, there's still a lot of consideration to sell cull cows that are still somewhat lucrative in this market that can get some bills paid. We may want to mention, and Jason, you may have the details on the LFP drought payments that producers can qualify for here coming up shortly. I know in our area, some of the parish FSA offices are taking enrollments for that. That is gonna help sober some of the situation as far as expenses. The LFP payment through FSA is going to be fairly good from what I'm hearing. So, um, cow calf pairs are still selling like there's a good market out there. So some producers are still paying, that $2,800 to $3,200 for the right kind of pairs that they can put in their herd and replace some of these old cows that, again, like we said, talked about time and time again, sound like a broken record, but those older cows are still in good flesh are bringing good money at the market. So, um, just the cost of doing business and a lot of skepticism on hay, what the hay quality is going to be like this year moving forward. We certainly, appreciate the rains we've gotten. People are, reluctant to put that fertilizer out, but it's some of it's going out, and we're seeing some greening, some hay fields that are being sprayed and getting ready to harvest here, hopefully in a month or so. So hopefully we get the right kind of conditions moving forward and not get any kind of accelerated rainfall that throws us into a situation like we were last year, where we couldn't cut any hay till July and August. So um, it's kind of somber as far as to sum it up, as far as the cattle situation. Um, not a lot of enthusiasm, but hopefully the market holds on. And with looking at the markets, $11 wheat, $8+ corn, uh, $4.50 fuel. It's hard to get past all those numbers, but hopefully there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, so to speak, here sometime soon. That's about all I have. It's bulls are out right now and going out depending on the calving season. It's important to keep the flies down. We've seen a pretty good run of flies as far as horn flies here lately. Because of the droughty conditions, we always see an increase in insect pressure when we have those conditions. So hopefully that people are taking the measures to keep horn flies down and manageable. Again, that's another costly venue, but it's important that we do that and use pink eye vaccines where necessary in overgrown pastures where flies or a combination can cause some pink eye issues. So Moving forward, we predicted 90-degree temperatures later on this week with another chance of rain on Friday. So we may get those summer pastures kicked in. There's a lot of poor pastures. We had some 40-degree nights here earlier in the week, so that's never a good combination for growing grass in South Louisiana. That's about all I have for this week.
Thank you, sir. And then, as Lee has been in the last few updates, he's on the road headed to his master cattleman over in Sabine Parish. But Lee, if you're with us, I'll let you go ahead and jump on and give your update for the northwest part of the state.
Thank you, Ashley. Very glad to be with all of you here today. Had our beef and forage field day over at the Red River Station last week, and a number of people that listened to our news update were in attendance and came up to me and said how much they appreciated the opportunity to listen to this little short discussion on current conditions. And so glad to hear that feedback from folks, positive, negative, or otherwise. We had excellent weather. Couldn't ask for a better day for that. Had a pretty large crowd come out, a lot of producers come out, and people get the chance to and sit around and discuss some topics related to our industry. As far as weather goes in the northwest part of the state, things are kind of drying up and heating up too. As far as moisture conditions go, most everybody has adequate moisture. We're still getting some periodic rainfalls. Unfortunately, a lot of them are still associated with those storm systems. I think we talked about those at length in the last news update, and there's more storms in the forecast coming up this next week. So kind of keep our eyes on that. Once again, that's just this time of year here in our part of the state and everything like that. The one thing of note as far as the weather goes, I'm sure we've had as windy a spring before, but my goodness, it's like we're up on the Great where as far as the wind that we've had, I can't remember consistent wind like what we've experienced this spring in my lifetime. It's just more times than not, you step outside and it's going to be a windy day. And with that being said, there's a lot of hay is getting put up. A lot of folks are trying to get some of that ryegrass, volunteer ryegrass, any wheat or oats they got planted, harvested and put up as baleage or as dry hay. There's been a lot of dry hay baled. I've talked to 2 or 3 producers who said that they set out to cut some hay and put it up as baleage and messed around and checked moisture, and the stuff was drying quicker than what they thought, and so they dry baled it. And I think that goes back to what I was talking about as far as the wind goes and these kind of windier conditions we've been experiencing. There's some cattle still being worked, but most of the spring works, I would say, is over. At least the large majority are wrapped up. I know there's still some folks that are gathering some cattle and getting some herd health objectives accomplished, but for the most part, everybody's kind of got that squared away going into the early summertime now. There's a lot of movement as far as ryegrass goes, as Vince alluded to. These winter forages, particularly this volunteer ryegrass and some of the cereal grains, they've kind of passed their peak, I guess you would say, gone to seed. And so people are starting to plan the next step. And I tell you, there's a lot of these folks, especially the folks that are grazing yearling type on these winter forages, that they wean these cattle or bought these cattle back in the fall. They put up with what they thought was sky high feed costs at that time, and just nursed them through. Went through a kind of a odd, cold, dry winter, and just waiting on ryegrass and watching it and thinking it's going to get better. We're in for some really high prices on these yearling type cattle coming off grass, and they just hadn't materialized. And there's tons that we can talk about it, and I'm sure Jason's going to cover it market-wise in his portion of this little update. And but there's a lot of, I hate to use the term, but almost pessimism, defeatism, I guess you would say, to these cattle markets and the current state of our industry. And whenever you combine together all those factors, like Vince was stating, the fuel and the fertilizer and these kind of stagnant live cattle prices, and when you add it all up together, you know, factor, we can work around it. You know, we can take a time of low cattle prices and get around that. Whenever you stack them all up against each other, they really can be kind of overwhelming, I guess you would say. But farmers and ranchers are optimistic folks, and we've made it before. We'll make it again. It's not all doom and gloom by any means. But I am going to end up with this portion, Ashley, before I turn it back over to you. And I've said this in these news updates before. We as cattle producers, specifically small cow-calf producers in the southeast part of the United States, we have ourselves about these major factors and plays that are coming into consideration in regards to our industry as a whole. It's very easy for the small cow-calf producer to kind of forget about what happens to that product after it leaves that sale barn or after it's delivered to the buyer or so on and so forth. But there are a multitude of other factors coming into play. There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of outside influence on the cattle industry today, and we could take an hour and talk about those different pressures that are being placed on us right now. And I'm not trying to use this as a lobbying time for one thing or another, but I do just want to call in mind, and if you don't take any other message to heart other than this, try to educate yourself, try to visit with some commodity groups, try to find out some more about these issues that our industry is facing and some of the issues that other production partners on down the line, such as stocker operators, feedlot owners, and even packers are facing, because it all comes to bearing on what the price of your weaned calf is bringing at the sale barn or through your local market, however you're selling your cattle. That, Ashley, I thank you, and y'all have a good day.
Thank you, Lee. You too. Be safe traveling. Jason, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for the Northeast region and our markets.
Thank you, ma'am. We, as they've already alluded, we also caught some very timely rains across Northeast Louisiana, anywhere from 1 inch to 3 inches of rain over the weekend, just depending on where you were and if you caught any of those really bright red sails that were rolling across the region at that time. But and it's these warmer nights. The air conditioners have been running over the nighttime, and that's normally whenever we know that that it's warming up is whenever the AC is running at night. So these normal tight nighttime temperatures, our daytime temperatures have already been reaching up into the 80s, and it's as Vince said, lots of this ryegrass is seeding out, and this Bermuda grass is ready to roll. All it needs is some warm nights like we've been getting, and it'll turn on the juice. It doesn't take it long to really start growing, and we're seeing that right now. So field conditions look great, and they and it's refreshing to see folks a little bit more optimistic about how their fields look, because whenever we were just dependent upon that spring green up time, trying to balance the ryegrass that we had available, it was a little bit depressing because there just wasn't a whole lot out there to be had, not near what we're normally used to in the spring of the year. But it's refreshing to see this Bermuda grass really coming on strong the way it is right now. So I told Dr. Edwards that I was going to cheat just a little bit. So I want to show y'all something. So this is current trading right now, live cattle futures, feeder cattle, and soybeans. So I want y'all to pay attention to these top 4 blocks right here. So we caught some really timely rains over the Midwestern states over the weekend. Anytime you start catching rain in those states, grazing lands improve and corn plantings improve. So we're seeing a big drop in corn and soybean futures. But I want you to pay attention to this one right here. These feeder cattle futures, we're up almost $6 in trading today. That's a lot of optimism. So live cattle are feeding off of that as well. So we're looking at live cattle up like $2.40 on the day for trading. So that's a good bit of optimism, and something we're certainly enjoying seeing today. I've got a couple other slides that I'll show you in just a second. If let me get these pulled over here before we get started. Let me run through these real quick. So can you see that, Ashley?
Yes, sir.
All right. So we got a cattle on feed report. Most everybody's probably already seen that report and knows what it looked like. But I just want to touch on a couple other things relative to that. So we know that there's a lot of cattle in the feed yards right now. Well, I don't think anybody's arguing that. It caught a lot of people up by surprise that we were 2%, plus 2% year over year in terms of our cattle on feed. I figured I'd just show that graph up there, but and there's a good bit of thought process that drought has played a major part of that. In terms of driving cattle out of some of those grazing lands earlier than they probably wanted them to be driven out, just because they ran out of grass in those large grazing areas of the Midwest and the West. So there's a good bit of background to that and legitimacy to that, just because if you look at that U.S. drought monitor, and we won't pull that up, we showed it to you several times of what that drought does look like or has looked like. But maybe we're turning that corner in terms of getting some timely moisture across some of those areas. So the next 2 slides are what I really want to pay attention to, because we've touched on this one time before in terms of beef cow slaughter, but I think this graph really puts it into perspective. So the blue line is 2022, the dotted line is 2021, and then the red line is our 2016 to 2020 average. So we're up 15.5% year over year based on what we were in March. So whenever our April numbers, final April numbers come out, and there's some speculation or some pre-estimates out there that we're going to be like 16.5% year over year increase in beef cow slaughter. So anytime we start taking that number of cows out of the breeding mix, the question becomes, what do the numbers start looking like outside the feed yards? What do they start looking like back on the farm in the cow-calf country? What are those numbers going to look like going forward? And then the last one that I'll pop up here is heifer slaughter. So you may have seen several of these reports that are showing what heifer slaughter is doing right now. So 2.76% year over year increase in heifer slaughter, which we're traveling, if you follow the dotted line and the red line. So we're tracking historically in terms of when we normally see large heifer slaughters, because we're leading up to the big grilling season. They're trying to get a lot of grind into the mix, a lot of hamburger meat. And we typically do see a good bit of slaughter, and it's the same way on the cow slaughter. If you follow the trend lines, and we are following that trend line spot on, but it's the ultimate number line that we're looking at in terms of these higher increases in beef cow slaughter and in heifer slaughter. So I guess I bring all this to your attention just to drive the point home that there's a lot of optimism going forward in this cattle industry, just because, yes, we might have a surplus of cattle in the yards right now, but whenever the feedlots and the packers work through that supply, they're going to be coming back looking for more supply. And this supply outside the feed yards and out here in the countryside, as that supply continues to decrease, and demand remains good, so we'll get some more export trade numbers the end of this month. So we'll continue to see whether or not we keep this high trade volume going forward. But if supply outside and here in the countryside is down, and we continue to maintain really good demand domestically and international for beef, that leads a lot of fundamental excitement, if you will, positivity in the cattle markets going forward. So I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page there. Hopefully y'all agree with that, and hopefully it sheds a little light of where we might be looking at going forward. So I'll get out of that, and we'll look at a few more of the markets. So at the end of the week, cattle slaughter was 656,000 head. That was down 9,000 from the previous week and up 3,000 over last year. The choice cutout is still looking for support after 2 weeks of declines. The next couple of weeks will reveal more information on spring demand for beef cuts. I've made the comment before that now all the way up to the Memorial Day, and then from Memorial Day up to 4th of July, that's huge demand season for high quality choice cuts of beef. The choice box beef closed the week at $263.21. That's down $6.37. With the choice select spread of $10.39, and that's down $2.06 from the previous week. So that cutout's just having a hard time finding some support. But I would suspect that will start changing directions here pretty soon. Just knowing what demand looks like, I think a lot of what's going to play into that in the summer months, that you can probably find every speculation out there that meets what you want to see. But I would suspect that consumer sentiment right now is also going to play a big part of this. Consumer spending, just because of the price of everything out there, from gas all the way to groceries, that's going to play a role in what this demand does going forward. As reported in the National Weekly Direct Slaughter Cattle Negotiated Purchasers Report, on a confirmed 135,487 head. For those of you who follow this report and you listen to that number or look at that number, that is an enormous number for negotiated purchases. Normally we're down there in the 90,000, 70 to 90,000. So that is a really big number for negotiated purchases. For the week in the Southern Plains, live purchases traded steady at 140, with a few in Kansas up to 141. In Nebraska for the week, live purchases traded mostly steady to $2 higher at 146. For the week in the Western Corn Belt, live purchases traded steady to $1 higher from 145 to 147, with a few up to 148. And in Colorado for the week, live purchases traded $2 to $4 higher from 146 to 147. All right, so I showed you that futures market, what we're looking at currently, real-time trades going on right now. So the numbers that I'm going to give you now are where we closed at last Friday. So these are actual settlements from last Friday. What we looked at a while ago, those are quotes. We're going to look at actual settlements from last Friday. So in the front months, they ended the week with June down $1.25 at 132.95. August down $1.07 at 135.52, and October down 57 at 142.67. So if we look at the week open with the week close, they closed $1 to $2 lower. 500 to 600 pound steers, medium and large 1s and 2s, sold between 165 and 183. That was $3 higher to $4 lower when compared to the previous week. 700 to 800 pound feeder steers, medium and large 1s and 2s, sold between $1.42 and $1.51. That was $4 higher to $3 lower when compared to the previous week. On those same class of cattle, futures market settlements in the front months ended the week with May trading down $1.60 at 156.35, August down $2.12 at 168.27, and September down $1.97 at 171.42. Lean coil cows, that's those thin condition cows, ended the week down 2 pennies at 75 cents. Utility cows in moderate condition ended the week down 1 penny at 82 cents, and breakers, that's those in that high body condition, ended the week down 2 pennies at 81 cents. So still some decent demand out there for those coil cows. Looking at our feedstuffs, soybean meals are trading down $17.30 at $470.50 a ton. Soybean hulls are steady at $155. Rice bran is steady at $190. Cottonseed meal is steady at $355. Whole cottonseed is up $10 at $405 a ton. Corn gluten feed, the 60% product, is up $10 at $785 a ton. DDGs up again at $16.67, and that puts them at $330 a ton for DDGs. Y'all, that hurts. That is a really, really good commodity byproduct that we utilize a lot across the cattle industry, and $330 a ton hurts. And then finally, corn up 4 cents at $8.24 a bushel. But as we saw a while ago, that is already trading down a good bit. So that's where it closed at last week on current prices. Vince and I were talking the other day, and that might be something I start incorporating in here. So that corn price is current price. So if you look out to new crop price, that price is not quite that high, and I would suspect that it's going to go down even more now that we're catching some timely rainfalls across the Corn Belt. So with that, Ashley, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, sir. So as I mentioned earlier, we don't have a whole lot in terms of events coming up. We just wrapped up a very busy April, as we talked about. I do want to go ahead and put on your radar our next webinar for our Beef Brunch series is next Tuesday, May 10th at 10:30 a.m. We will have Dr. Jason Banta with Texas A&M AgriLife Extension and Research, and he's going to talk about mineral supplementation. So again, 10:30 next Tuesday, May 10th. It'll be a live event, but we will record it and we will get that online for you as well in the future. And I believe that's all we have for y'all today. We hope that, again, we get good rain without the crazy storms, and we will see y'all again in a couple of weeks.